products that that have been developed for 17 years. Actually, there was a great talk here yesterday on the NTLM nonce vulnerability that had been in every version of Windows back to Windows 3.51. How often does that happen? You very rarely hear of a vuln that goes back like 10 versions of a product because stuff gets worked out. So our industry always lives at the front of the threat vector. It always lives at the newest technology, which means you get obsolete real quick if you don't keep up.
And I think the thing that you have to do is that when you start looking at your skills, going back to that, is thinking about which skills you can leverage so you remain relevant and become more relevant. And those don't have to always be technical skills. A lot of them could be leadership and business skills. So I think it always kind of then comes back to, and this is one of my favorite quotes. I don't even know the guy who said it, but I just think it's a great quote, right? It says, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. And I think there's some just general examples of talking about how you can negotiate better for yourself. And I mean, I think that the key component in negotiation is that everybody thinks it's an adversarial situation. Like when I deal with people, I'll say, well, what were you earning at your past job? And well, why does your company need to know that? Well, they need to know that because they're going to be making some decisions. So you have to be able to start thinking of negotiation in a way where you're humanizing the discussions, where you're taking a very candid and professional approach to negotiation. You're not going to be surprising. Your value of your skills is what your value of your skills are. And I think that what happens is that a lot of people believe that there's these hidden myths in negotiation compensation where the best practices are really honesty. If you know you need a certain amount of money to take a job, you need to let people know that I need that amount of money to take the job. There really shouldn't be any surprises. And if you start thinking about your career goal and the business goal, if money is important to you, you have to figure out what that career goal really pays. Not what you saw on some website, not what, some broad-based website puts out about, oh yeah, if you're a security manager in New York City, you should be earning $200,000. That is completely not the case, but there's a ton of bad data out there. So you have to come with a good understanding of what these jobs pay. And if you know that you want to make $200,000 a year and you pick a career goal that's only going to max out about 125 or 130, you got a problem. You either have to adjust how you're living or you have to adjust your goal. So that goes back to that alignment, right? I mean, I also think this is that depending on where you are in your career, you're going to make different compensation decisions. I think that as a standard rule of thumb is that if you're early in your career, never take a job because of money. Always take a job because of experience, for acceleration, to work with smart people. Later in your career, your goals might change and money might be important. You might want to think about all those decisions that you've made along the way prepare you for a job where you can command larger compensation. The better your skills, the more leverage you have. But you can never overplay your hand. And I feel like I can say that in Vegas. There's a lot of poker rooms out here, right? But overplaying your hand means is that you think that you're smarter than you really are. You think that they need you more than you need them. You think you're that much better than option B. You know what? Miscongeniality doesn't look so bad. And you have to understand that is that when you get into one of these discussions about compensation and negotiation, you really need to know kind of where you sit in relationship to others, how badly you want to acquire the experience, and how important that experience is to your ultimate long-term goal.
You didn't mention career terrorism.
Oh, well, I love, one of my favorite statements is career terrorism. How many of you guys hire people or, have people who work for you? You ever like when somebody comes to your office and say, look, if you don't give me $10,000, I'm going to quit my job? And how do you respond to that as manager? You got to love that, right? I'm going to say, get out of here, right? I mean,
enjoy that new job.
But you know what, though? People do that still. In the dot-com days, that was common practice. But you know what? There's a way to go out and do it. And talking to your employer about, maybe you had some life changes. Maybe you can say, hey, look, you know what? I'd really like to remain working here. Everything is great about my job, but I need to earn more money, and I'm hoping you can find a way to get it for me. And you know what? You can make a decision after that. But you have to think about, you have to negotiate like a business person. You know, if I negotiate with a customer and say, you know, you have to give me this, take it or leave it, they're going to say leave it. You have to work with people, and you got to understand that.
All right, the last part of most org charts is R&D. And when we're talking about R&D, we're not talking about it the way most security companies do it. We're thinking more like an Intel or a GE, where there's actually the thought of real investment. You see it on the news that GE allocates $200 million to research and development, which basically means, how do I go out and find new stuff? How do I put new stuff in the pipeline that will be part of the product in 3, 4, 5, 10 years that will continue to make my business evolve?
I mean, if you don't invest in yourself, if you don't reinvest in your career is going to fail. That's going to be your exit strategy. Failure, redundancy, mediocrity. And I think the common thing is this, is that, you know, anytime you make an investment in your career, and the way I define it, a career investment might be anything by, it could be a certification, it could be education, it could be training, it could be something completely off the wall that gives you a common linkage with somebody. It could be golf lessons, it could be wine tasting. Now those might be a little bit more fun than getting a CISSP or a SAN certification. But you know what though? You're also playing to your audience. If you know that your audience likes to golf, maybe that's something you want to do. Now, I'm not going to say that everybody should go out and, you know, become Tiger Woods, but I'm saying is that you have to pick career investments that help augment and help get you to your career goals, and figure those things out, what that means for you. And getting back to like some of these standard investments like the CISSP and, you know, all these other, like a basic training, or, you know, coming to a conference, those are good investments, but they're all safe investments. Think about how many people come here. Think about how many CISSPs there are. They're going to sustain your business. They're not going to grow it. So you got to think about it that way. You have to choose investments that are going to differentiate you from your competitors, not keep you on the same line with them.
Anybody in here ever taken a really weird training just to get a skill that nobody else has? What was it? Human relations. You know, there's, in our industry, that's definitely a differentiator sometimes. AS400 security.
Retro.
Yeah, that's the retro investment. That's awesome.
That's good, though.
No, but that's, I mean, that's about offering something unique to your customer, right? Anybody else?
Anybody do something like, you know, completely wacky? Or how many people have a master's degree here? Okay. How many people have a master's degree in information security? Why did you guys choose to get a master's in information security? Anyone? Like, why that degree? Why that specialization over others? So question. So when you were deciding that, did you decide more to focus on information? Why didn't you focus on like more of an MBA type of a skill program as opposed to information security? And that's a great answer. I mean, and that's a great answer. I think that when you start thinking about any of these big education investments, you have to think about, what is the branding of that investment and what other people care and think about that branding, right? I mean, if you went and you start, I think I'm going to be out of order here, but but if you start thinking about, like, if somebody got it, and I'm not making judgments when I say this, but I want you to think, I'm going to say some things. If you were interviewing for a position and you had one candidate who had a master's degree from the University of Phoenix, and you had another candidate who had a master's degree from any Ivy League school, what would you think of the branding of those two different master's programs? Would you have any preconceived notions when the person walked in the door? If you only had to choose one person to interview, who would you interview? Right? So you have to think about the branding of the investments. The best way you can think about before you make an investment, if I had somebody and I met them who had this investment, what would be my blink reaction to that person? You have to think about that with your career, because you're going to spend money, you're going to spend your time, you're going to spend your effort, and there's going to be sacrifice. So before you go out and plunk down money and plunk down your time, think about the value of that investment to yourself and to people who are going to help you get to where you want to go.
And ultimately, what Lee's saying is that you have to calculate return on investment. You have to calculate your ROI. Now, your return on an investment might be more than financial. You're happier. That's a great return on investment. You followed your passion. You did what you loved. That's pretty freaking cool. It might be that you have increased career acceleration, opportunities for more things, more access, more respect. These are all intangible returns on the investments that you can make. But you have to think about it.
Sure, and so we're running a little bit low on time, so I'll give you my our three standard rules on career investments, and very simple. You get what you pay for. I mean, that to me is very important. And anytime you invest in yourself, generally speaking, it's money well spent. Getting better, no matter what it is good. It's always better to get better. Can't go wrong getting better. Can't go wrong getting smarter. And if you don't invest in yourself, don't expect anybody else to. Because corporations have different reasons for investing than you as you do. If they're writing the check, it's because it benefits them. If you're writing the check, it's because it benefits you. And you got to think about that.
All right. Last thing in a corporate structure is the board of directors. CEO always has a board that they are both accountable to, but that provide advice to them. So I ask you, who is your board of directors? We often, the word mentor has been thrown around a lot in our industry in the last couple of months. This is where mentorship comes in. Who do you go to for advice? Who do you go to talk about your career? And your board of directors, you should identify who those people are. Who are you going to talk to the next time you make a career decision? I know who mine are. I have 4 people that I always talk to. And those people will come from all different parts of your